My own daughter slapped me in front of 250 guests at her wedding because I wouldn't give her my luxury $860,000 penthouse. Turns out, a judge was watching. The crack of Sophie's palm across my face silenced 250 wedding guests in an instant. I didn't see it coming. One moment I was standing in the center of that beautiful ballroom, surrounded by orchids and champagne and string lights that made everything look like a fairy tale. The next moment, my head snapped to the side, my champagne glass slipping from my fingers and shattering against the marble floor in a spray of crystal and golden liquid. The sting came second. First was the sound, that sharp, unmistakable crack that echoed off the vaulted ceiling and seemed to freeze time itself. Then the burn spread across my left cheek, hot and somehow cold at the same time. My ears rang, the ballroom tilted. And there was Sophie, my daughter, standing over me in her white Vera Wang wedding dress, her face twisted into something I didn't recognize, something ugly and raw and terrifying. "You selfish, pathetic old woman." Her voice was shrill, cutting through the shocked silence like broken glass. "That penthouse is mine, you hear me? Mine!" I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I just stood there with my hand slowly rising to my burning cheek, staring at this stranger who looked like my daughter. Around us, 250 faces were frozen in various stages of shock, mouths hanging open, eyes wide, and then, oh God, the phones. One by one they started rising, recording, capturing my humiliation in high definition. Someone gasped. A woman near the back started crying. The string quartet had stopped playing mid-note, and in that terrible silence, Sophie's breathing was ragged and harsh. "Sophie." A woman's voice cut through the chaos. Judge Grace Harper, I recognized her from the ceremony, elegant in a navy evening gown, was pushing through the crowd, her face a mask of professional concern. "Sophie, that's enough." But Sophie wasn't done. She leaned closer, her wedding veil shifting with the movement, her breath hot against my face. "You think you can embarrass me? Ruin my wedding day? After everything I've—" "Not here. Not now." Luke Bennett, Sophie's brand new husband, grabbed her arm and pulled her back. His voice was urgent, almost panicked, and he kept his face turned away from the phones. "Sophie, people are watching. We need to—" She wrenched free from his grip, her eyes locked on mine with something that looked like pure hatred. "You'll regret this, mother." The word mother came out like a curse. "I promise you will." Then Luke was dragging her away, his hand firm on her elbow, whispering something I couldn't hear. Sophie's white dress trailed behind her like a ghost as they disappeared through the French doors that led to the terrace. I stood alone in the center of that ballroom, hundreds of eyes on me, my hand still pressed to my burning cheek. The world was spinning. Or maybe I was spinning. I couldn't tell anymore. Someone touched my shoulder, the wedding coordinator, all concerned smiles and false sympathy. "Mrs. Carter, let me help you to—" I pulled away. I didn't want her help. Didn't want anyone's help. I just wanted to disappear. But I couldn't disappear. Not yet. Because 30 minutes ago, before that slap, something else had happened. Something that explained everything and nothing all at once. 30 minutes earlier, Sophie had cornered me in the bridal suite. I'd been admiring the bouquets, blush roses and white peonies, Sophie's favorite since she was a little girl, when she'd appeared in the doorway already in her wedding dress. Her face set in that expression I'd learned meant she wanted something. "Mom, not mother yet. That would come later. We need to discuss your wedding gift." The tone was wrong. Too cold. Too transactional. I'd set my champagne down on the vanity, my reflection staring back at me from 3 angles, a 68-year-old woman in a pale blue dress, trying to feel like this was still a celebration. "I already gave you—" "Not the china." Sophie moved closer, and that's when I saw the papers in her hand. Legal documents, the kind with thick covers and official-looking seals. She slid them across the vanity with one perfectly manicured nail. "This is what I need from you." I picked up the first page, my reading glasses perched on my nose. Property transfer papers, my penthouse, my home. The address was right there at the top, typed out in formal legal language. "Sophie, what is this?" "It's simple." She leaned against the vanity, her wedding dress rustling with the movement. "I need you to sign over the penthouse, today, as my wedding gift." The words hit me like ice water. "Sophie, that penthouse is my entire retirement security. You're 68 and alone." She said it like it was a simple fact, like she was pointing out the weather. "What do you need a 3-bedroom luxury penthouse for? It's wasted on you." The door opened and Luke walked in, his tuxedo crisp, his smile practiced. "Mrs. Carter." He'd always called me that, never Mom or Evelyn. We'd take such good care of it. And think of the grandchildren. They'd need the space someday. Grandchildren, the ones I'd been promised, the ones Sophie dangled like carrots whenever she wanted something. I looked down at the papers again, really looked at them. They weren't fresh. The creases suggested they'd been folded and unfolded multiple times. The date at the top was from 3 weeks ago, and at the bottom, witness lines, one with Clara's signature already filled in. My sister, Clara. She knew about this. "This isn't spontaneous," I said slowly, my mind racing. "You've been planning this." "Mom," Sophie's voice took on that edge, the one that meant her patience was running thin. "I worked 40 years as a nurse, just like you keep reminding everyone. I know what planning looks like." She didn't. She didn't know. She didn't know about the double shifts when she was in middle school, the weekends I spent at the hospital when I should have been at, her soccer games, the holidays I worked so she could have presents under the tree. She didn't know that I'd bought that penthouse at 62 after a lifetime of sacrifice, after living in cramped apartments and studio flats and places that never felt like home. The penthouse was my first real home. My only major asset. My safety net for when my body couldn't handle nursing anymore, for when I needed 24-hour care myself someday, for when I was the one lying in a hospital bed hoping someone would visit. No. The word came out firm. Stronger than I felt. "No, Sophie, I earned this. It's my safety net." Sophie's face changed. The mask of the beautiful bride cracked, and underneath was something cold and calculating. "So you're choosing that apartment over your own daughter? That's not—" "It is." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "Sign the papers, or you're done. No more calls, no more visits, no relationship, no grandchildren. You'll be alone, Mom, completely alone. Is that what you want?" My hand was shaking as I set the papers down. "I can't do this." Can't or won't? Both. I walked out, just turned around and walked out of that bridal suite, past the bridesmaids who were clustered in the hallway whispering, past the groomsmen checking their phones, past all of it. I went back to the ballroom because I was the mother of the bride, and that's what mothers do. They show up even when their hearts are breaking. I should have known it wouldn't end there. The memory dissolved as my phone buzzed in my clutch purse, pulling me back to the present. Back to the valet bringing my car around, his eyes full of pity. Back to the 20-minute drive home through city streets that blurred through my tears. I made it to the penthouse on autopilot. 14th floor, city view, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a sea of lights, the place I'd sacrificed everything for. It felt like a prison now. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, examining the damage. My left cheek was swollen, red, the clear outline of Sophie's hand visible against my pale skin. My mascara had run, leaving dark tracks down my face. My hair, carefully styled that morning, was a mess. "You're old and useless anyway," Sophie's voice echoed in my head. "What are you going to do, live forever?" My phone rang, shattering the silence. Clara's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but some stupid, hopeful part of me thought maybe Clara was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd tell me she didn't know what Sophie was planning. Maybe my sister would be on my side. "Evelyn." Clara's voice was tight, annoyed. "What did you do? What did I—" I couldn't even finish the sentence. "Clara," she hit me, in front of everyone, "because you embarrassed her. On her wedding day. Do you have any idea how selfish you're being?" The words hit harder than Sophie's slap. "Selfish? That penthouse is too much for you anyway." Clara's voice took on that condescending tone, the one she'd used since we were children. "You're one old woman living alone in 3 bedrooms. Sophie's building a family. She needs that space. I earned that. What if you fall? What if you get dementia? You can't even take care of yourself, and you're worried about a stupid apartment? My hands were shaking. How long have you known about this? Silence. Then, Sophie and I have been talking for a few weeks. She's concerned about you. We both are. Weeks. My own sister had been conspiring with my daughter for weeks, and I'd had no idea. Clara. Sophie's talking to a lawyer, Evelyn. You need to make this right before it gets ugly. Before you lose everything anyway, including your daughter. The line went dead. I stood there in my beautiful penthouse surrounded by everything I'd worked for and realized I was completely alone. My daughter hated me. My sister had betrayed me. Everyone I loved had chosen sides and I was losing. No, I'd already lost. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, pressing my palm against the cool glass. The city stretched out below me. Thousands of lights and thousands of windows. Thousands of lives I'd never know. My reflection stared back at me. 68 years old, cheeks swollen, eyes red, completely and utterly alone. But as I stood there, something shifted. The shock was fading, burned away by something hotter, something harder. I'd spent 40 years taking care of other people. 40 years putting everyone else first. And this was my reward? Being hit by my own daughter? Being told I was selfish for wanting to keep what I'd earned? No. Something in my chest hardened, crystallized into something that felt almost like strength. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered. Mrs. Carter? A woman's voice, calm and professional. This is Judge Grace Harper. I saw what happened tonight. We need to talk. I looked at my reflection one more time. At the handprint on my cheek. At the tears I'd finally stopped crying. At the woman who was done being a victim. Yes, I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. Yes, we do. The cafe was quiet at 9 in the morning, the kind of place where people met for business they didn't want overheard. Judge Grace Harper was already there when I arrived, seated in a corner booth with 2 coffees waiting. She stood when she saw me, her eyes immediately going to my cheek. The swelling had gone down overnight. But the bruise was vivid now, purple and yellow, impossible to hide even with makeup. Mrs. Carter. She gestured to the seat across from her. Thank you for meeting me. I slid into the booth, wrapping my hands around the warm coffee cup she pushed toward me. You said we needed to talk. I did. Grace leaned forward, her voice low and serious. I'm speaking to you as a concerned witness right now, not as a judge. What I saw last night was assault, plain and simple. I looked down at my coffee. She's my daughter. She was just upset about the wedding. Mrs. Carter. Grace's tone was gentle but firm, the voice of someone who'd heard every excuse. I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen this pattern before. This isn't about a wedding. Something in the way she said it, so certain, so knowing, made the dam break. The story came pouring out. Sophie's father leaving when she was 3, the double shifts at the hospital, the 16-hour days that bled into each other until I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept in my own bed for a full night. I missed everything, I heard myself saying, the words bitter in my mouth. Her first school play, I was working. Her 13th birthday, double shift in the ICU. Her high school graduation, I picked up an emergency call. Grace was listening, really listening, not with pity but with understanding. She resented me for it. The memory was as clear as yesterday. Sophie, at 16, screaming at me in our tiny apartment, "You're never there for me. What's the point of having a mother if she's always gone?" And I'd believed her. God help me, I believed I was failing her. So I'd compensated, paid for the expensive college she wanted, bought her the car for graduation, gave her money for the apartment in the good neighborhood, the one I could never afford for myself. Anything to make up for the time I couldn't give her because I was too busy keeping us alive. The penthouse, I said quietly, was the first thing I ever bought for myself. 40 years of savings. I was 62 years old, and it was the first time in my life I had something that was just mine. Grace's expression didn't change, but her eyes softened. How did Sophie react when you bought it? The memory stung. She was cold, distant. She said, "That's a lot of money, Mom." Not congratulations, not you deserve it, just judgment. When did she first ask about it? I closed my eyes, the timeline clicking into place with horrible clarity. 2 years ago, right after she met Luke. My voice cracked. Her visits increased. She'd come over and say things like, "This place is so big for one person," or "Have you thought about your estate planning?" And Luke, I shook my head. He's a real estate investor. He'd ask these innocent-sounding questions about property value, mortgage status, maintenance costs. "You thought they were concerned about you?" Or, "I thought it was love." The words came out as a whisper. I thought my daughter cared. Grace reached across the table, her hand covering mine. I saw Sophie and a woman I assume is her aunt leaving the wedding venue together last night. They were laughing, Mrs. Carter, laughing. The image hit me like a physical blow. While I was driving home in tears, while I was standing in my bathroom staring at my swollen face, my daughter and my sister were laughing about it. Grace pulled a business card from her purse and slid it across the table. "Call this attorney. Today. His name is William Drake. He specializes in elder law and he's the best I know." I stared at the card, my vision blurring. I don't even know who my daughter is anymore. Then it's time to find out. I spent the rest of the morning doing something I should have done years ago, looking for the truth. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table, my phone beside it, and I started digging through every text message, every email, every birthday card Sophie had sent me, looking for the pattern I'd been too blind to see. It was there. God, it was all there. Sophie's 30th birthday, 3 years ago. "Mom, I'd love to host your 65th at my place someday." Not her place. My place. The penthouse. Christmas. 2 years ago, the card she'd given me with a Hallmark poem about mothers and daughters. P.S. Have you updated your will lately? Just want to make sure everything's in order for you. Love you. Last Thanksgiving, Luke casually mentioning over turkey, "You know, Mrs. Carter, the maintenance costs on a place like this must be significant. Property taxes, too. Quite a burden. A burden." That's what my home was to them. A burden they wanted to relieve me of. I kept digging, going deeper into my email trash folder, and that's when I found it. An email from 8 months ago, subject line still visible even though the content had been recalled. "Mom's penthouse situation. We need to talk." From Sophie to Clara. CC'd to me by accident, then desperately unsent. They'd been planning this for at least 8 months. Maybe longer. My phone rang. Margaret, my old nursing colleague from the hospital. We'd worked together for 15 years before I retired. "Evelyn." Her voice was hesitant. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I heard something at the wedding. Before the, incident. My hand tightened on the phone. "What did you hear?" "I was in the ladies' room. Sophie was outside with Luke's mother, and they didn't know I was there. Sophie was saying," Margaret paused. She said, "Once we get the penthouse, we can flip it or rent it out. It's worth at least $2.3 million. Luke's already got buyers interested." The room tilted. "Evelyn, are you still there?" "They want to sell it." My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. This was never about family, never about grandchildren or concern or love. They want to sell my home. "I'm so sorry. I thought you should know." After Margaret hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, the truth crystallizing into something sharp and painful. Sophie's entire narrative about building a family and needing the space was a lie, a calculated, manipulative lie designed to make me feel guilty for wanting to keep what I'd earned. I picked up Judge Grace's business card and dialed William Drake's number with shaking fingers. He answered on the second ring. "Drake Law Offices." "Mr. Drake, my name is Evelyn Carter. Judge Grace Harper told me to call you." "Ah, Mrs. Carter." His voice was firm, professional, somehow reassuring. Grace filled me in on what happened at the wedding. "I've been expecting your call." I told him everything. The demand for the penthouse, the slap, Clara's betrayal, the evidence I'd found. When I finished, Drake was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you some direct questions. Has your daughter tried to access your bank accounts recently?" "No, I don't think so." "What about medical records? Credit cards?" I I don't know. Check. Right now. I'll hold. With Drake still on the line, I pulled up my bank account on my laptop, then my credit monitoring service. My fingers froze over the keyboard. Mr. Drake? My voice was barely a whisper. There's an unauthorized credit check here, from 3 weeks ago. Bennett Properties LLC. His response was immediate and grim. Mrs. Carter, they're not just planning, they're already building a case. We need to meet tomorrow morning, first thing. Can you make 9 a.m.? Yes. Good. Don't respond to any communication from your daughter or sister. Don't engage. Just forward everything to my office. Understood? I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. Understood. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my laptop screen, at the evidence of my daughter's betrayal spelled out in digital footprints. Sophie wasn't just greedy, she was strategic, methodical. She'd been planning this for years. Every visit a reconnaissance mission, every concerned comment a setup. My email pinged. New message. From Sophie. Subject: we need to talk about your behavior. My hand hovered over the mouse, then clicked. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation. Mom, it began, the tone somehow both clinical and condescending. After your erratic behavior at my wedding, Luke and I have been discussing our concerns about your mental competency with some professionals. We think it's best if someone takes over managing your affairs for your own safety and well-being. Erratic behavior. She'd hit me, and I was the one who'd behaved erratically. I scrolled down, my stomach turning. We've consulted with Dr. Whitmore, who shares our concerns based on what we've told him about your recent episodes of confusion, poor judgment regarding financial decisions, and risk of self-neglect. We're also worried about your vulnerability to exploitation by strangers who might take advantage of your condition. My condition. I was 68 years old and sharper than most 40-year-olds, but according to this email, I was deteriorating rapidly. Then I saw the attachment. PDF file. I clicked it. Petition for emergency guardianship. The words blurred on the screen as I read. Sophie and Luke were petitioning the court to declare me mentally incompetent. They wanted control of everything, my assets, my medical decisions, my living arrangements. They wanted the legal right to decide where I lived, how I spent my money, whether I could make my own choices. The justification was a list of lies, irrational behavior and emotional outbursts. I'd refused to give away my home. Poor judgment regarding financial decisions. I'd managed my money perfectly for 40 years. Risk of self-neglect and exploitation by strangers. I was independent and capable. Family concerns about early-stage dementia. There was nothing wrong with my mind. Listed as supporters, Clara Dawson and Dr. James Whitmore. At the bottom, hearing scheduled in 10 days. 10 days. They were giving me 10 days before they tried to take everything. My whole body was shaking as I called Drake back. They're filing for guardianship, I said as soon as he answered. Emergency guardianship. They're trying to declare me incompetent. I heard papers rustling. Forward me that petition immediately. I did, listening to the silence on the other end as he reviewed it. Finally, Mrs. Carter, this is serious, but it's also overreach. They're rushing this, and that's actually in our favor. How is any of this in our favor? Emergency guardianship requires evidence of immediate danger. A slap at a wedding, that you received, not gave, doesn't prove incompetence. They're bluffing, but it's an aggressive bluff. He paused. We need to meet tomorrow. We have 10 days to build an airtight case that you're fully competent. Mental health evaluation, financial audit, character witnesses. Judge Grace has already offered to provide a statement. What happens if they win? My voice was barely audible. If they win, you lose control of your assets, your medical decisions, your freedom. They could force you into a nursing home, sell your penthouse, and you'd have no legal say in any of it. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. But they won't win, Drake continued, his voice firm. Mrs. Carter, they're betting you'll be too scared or embarrassed to fight back. Don't be. We're going to show that court exactly what this is, a cash grab by a greedy daughter and her bankrupt husband. After we hung up, I stood at my kitchen window, looking out at the city view I'd worked 40 years to afford. Every corner of this penthouse held a memory of sacrifice, The living room where I'd finally been able to buy furniture I actually liked instead of second-hand pieces from Goodwill. The kitchen with granite countertops I'd installed myself because I couldn't afford a contractor. The master bedroom with its view of downtown, where I'd spent my first night here crying because I finally had a real home. My phone buzzed. Text from Sophie. "Mom, I'm doing this because I love you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just let us help." The gaslighting was almost impressive. She was trying to steal my life, and she wanted me to be grateful for it. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. "See you in court." The response was immediate. Angry emojis. "Then you're making a huge mistake. Don't say I didn't warn you." I looked around my penthouse one more time. At the life I'd built from nothing. At the security I'd earned through decades of sacrifice. They think I'm weak because I'm old, I thought. They're about to learn I'm not. A knock at the door made me jump. I checked the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, professional-looking in a gray pantsuit, carrying a clipboard. An official badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. I opened the door slowly. "Mrs. Carter?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm Rachel Moore from Adult Protective Services. We received a report about your welfare. May I come in?" And just like that, I realized Sophie's attack had already begun. The social worker from Adult Protective Services stood in my doorway with a clipboard and a sympathetic smile that made my skin crawl. "Mrs. Carter?" Rachel Moore's voice was professional, practiced. "I'm so sorry to intrude, but we received a report from family members concerned about your safety and mental state. May I come in?" My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. This was Sophie's doing. Of course it was. File a guardianship petition, then immediately call APS to build a paper trail. Create evidence that I was incompetent, that I needed intervention, that my own family was right to be concerned. But I'd spent 40 years as a nurse. I knew how to stay calm under pressure. Of course. I stepped aside, letting her in. "Though I assure you there's been a misunderstanding." Rachel's eyes swept over my apartment as she entered, and I watched her take it in through a professional lens. The immaculate living room, fresh flowers on the coffee table, today's newspaper folded neatly beside my reading glasses. No clutter, no mess. No signs of the confused, deteriorating woman Sophie had described in her petition. "This is just a standard wellness check," Rachel said, her tone gentler now. "I'll need to ask you some questions and take a quick look around. Is that all right?" "Whatever you need." She walked through my home methodically, and I followed, watching her make notes. In the kitchen, fresh groceries organized in the refrigerator, no expired food, clean dishes. At my desk, bills neatly filed and paid on time, my checkbook balanced to the penny. In the bathroom, my medications properly stored, all current prescriptions, everything labeled and organized. My nursing background was showing, and I could see Rachel noticing. "Mrs. Carter, can you tell me what day it is?" "Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. "And who's the current president?" I answered each question calmly, precisely. Yes, I managed my own medications. Yes, I did my own shopping and cooking. Yes, I paid my own bills. No, I didn't have any confusion or memory problems. "Do you feel safe here?" Rachel asked, her pen poised over her clipboard. "Has anyone threatened you, or made you feel afraid?" I hesitated. This was the moment. Tell the truth or protect Sophie one more time. Rachel's eyes dropped to my cheek, where the bruise was still visible under my makeup. "Mrs. Carter, I can see the bruise. What happened?" The words came out steady, clear. "My daughter slapped me at her wedding because I refused to give her my home." Something shifted in Rachel's expression. Not shock, recognition. She'd heard variations of this story before. "May I photograph that?" she asked quietly. "With your permission." I nodded, and she took several pictures, documenting the evidence of Sophie's violence from multiple angles. Her notes became more detailed, more careful. When she finished, Rachel set down her clipboard and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Carter, I need to be honest with you. You're clearly competent. Your home is immaculate. You're articulate, oriented, and managing independently. I see no evidence whatsoever of the concerns that were reported." Relief flooded through me. "But," she continued, "this report will be filed. If there's a court hearing, and I suspect there might be, I'll be required to testify about what I found, which is that you appear to be managing independently and I found no evidence of the concerns reported." She paused. "I've seen cases like this before, Mrs. Carter. Family members who use the system to try to control elderly relatives, usually for financial reasons. After Rachel left, I immediately called William Drake. The wellness check just happened," I told him. "She said I'm clearly competent." "Good." Drake's voice was firm, confident. "That report will actually help us. It proves the guardianship petition is retaliatory, not necessary." He paused. "Now let's talk about building your case. I need you to document everything, every text, every email, every interaction with your daughter or sister. Can you do that?" "My office, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We have work to do." Drake's law office was exactly what I expected. Walls lined with books about elder law, framed certificates, photos of smiling elderly clients who'd won their cases. Drake himself was late 50s, silver-haired with a kind of gentle but fierce energy that told me he'd fought these battles before and won. "Mrs. Carter." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Let's build your defense." For the next 2 hours, we worked through every piece of evidence. Judge Grace Harper had already submitted a witness statement about the slap. My bank statements showed perfect financial management, no unusual activity, no missed payments, no signs of confusion or poor judgment. Drake had scheduled a comprehensive medical evaluation with Dr. Patricia Chen, a geriatrics specialist, for the next morning. "We need character witnesses," Drake said, making notes. "People who can testify to your competence and independence." I gave him names. Margaret, my old nursing colleague. Tom Rodriguez, my building manager. Helen Park, my neighbor who checked on me weekly. All people who knew me, who could vouch for my capability. Then Drake slid a folder across his desk. My investigator found something interesting about Luke Bennett. I opened it. Financial records, business filings, bankruptcy documents. 3 prior LLCs, Drake said. All bankrupt. Total debts of about $340,000. Your daughter married him 18 months ago. Shortly after, the comments about your penthouse started, the questions about property value, the estate planning concerns. The pattern was obvious. Luke needed money. Sophie provided access to someone who had it, me. This isn't just greed, Mrs. Carter. They might be desperate. And desperate people are dangerous. He walked me through the security measures we'd implement. New passwords on all my accounts. Drake himself added as power of attorney for healthcare and finances, but only if I became legitimately incapacitated with independent medical verification. Sophie removed from all beneficiary designations. A living trust created with specific instructions. If I had grandchildren, they'd inherit, but the money would be held in trust until they turned 30, managed by Drake's firm. Sophie would get nothing directly. "I never thought I'd have to protect myself from my own daughter," I said quietly. Drake's expression was kind but honest. "You're not alone. I see this more often than you'd think. Aging parents become vulnerable, and some people see opportunity instead of family." The final hour was practice, mock testimony, Drake playing opposing counsel, throwing harsh questions at me. "Mrs. Carter, isn't it true you caused a scene at your daughter's wedding?" "No. My daughter struck me when I refused to sign over my property." "Don't you think at 68 it's irresponsible to maintain such a large property alone?" "I've maintained it perfectly for 6 years. I'm capable and independent." Over and over, Drake coached me. Stay calm, be factual. Don't justify, don't apologize. Tell the truth simply and let the evidence speak. We were finishing up when Drake's phone rang. He listened, his face darkening. "That was my paralegal," he said after hanging up. "Sophie's attorney just filed an emergency motion. They want the hearing moved up to 3 days from now. They're claiming you're rapidly deteriorating and intervention is urgently needed." 3 days. They were giving me 3 days. "We'll be ready," Drake said firmly. "Go home, rest. Tomorrow we start gathering evidence." The next 3 days were a blur of controlled chaos. Day 1 started with Dr. Patricia Chen's evaluation. 3 hours of cognitive tests, memory exercises, physical examination, mental health screening. She tested everything: my ability to manage finances, my judgment, my capacity to make decisions, my mental state. When we finished, Dr. Chen smiled. "Mrs. Carter, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds I see. There is zero evidence of dementia, cognitive decline, or incompetence. None." Her written report was even more definitive. Patient demonstrates full cognitive capacity, excellent judgment, and independent functioning in all areas of daily living. That afternoon, I met with Judge Grace Harper at a quiet coffee shop. Off the record, she told me, but she wanted me to know what she'd testify to in court. "I saw the slap," Grace said. "I saw Sophie as the aggressor and you as the victim. Your behavior was shocked but completely appropriate. There was nothing erratic about your response." She leaned forward. "Evelyn, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I know a cash grab when I see one, and this is textbook." Day 2 was character witnesses. Tom Rodriguez, my building manager, practically fuming about Sophie's petition. "Mrs. Carter is one of our best residents. Always pays on time, never any complaints, completely independent. This is absurd." Helen Park, my neighbor, was equally adamant. "I check on Evelyn every week. We have coffee. She's vibrant, active, fully capable. Someone's lying about her condition." Margaret from the hospital was the most passionate. "Evelyn Carter managed critical care patients for decades. Life and death decisions. If she can handle that, she can certainly manage her own life." But as the evidence mounted in my favor, Sophie's attacks intensified. The text messages came constantly, each one more aggressive than the last. "Mom, you're embarrassing yourself. Everyone knows you need help. Clara and I are worried sick. Why are you being so stubborn? If you drop this, we can all move on. Otherwise, this gets ugly." Clara left a voicemail, her voice thick with fake emotion. "Evelyn, I'm begging you. Sophie is my niece. Don't tear this family apart over money. Don't make me choose between you." The gaslighting was constant, exhausting. Every message positioned me as the problem, the unreasonable one, the person tearing the family apart. Not Sophie, who'd hit me, not Clara, who'd betrayed me. Me for refusing to be stolen from. I didn't respond to any of it. Drake had told me not to engage, so I didn't, but each message made my resolve harder, my spine straighter. Day 3 was final preparation. Drake's office, evidence binders spread across the conference table, photos of my bruise, Rachel Moore's positive wellness report, Dr. Chen's competency evaluation, my perfect financial records, the timeline of Sophie's escalating demands, proof of Luke's bankruptcies and that unauthorized credit
Tomorrow,
check. "You're not fighting for property," Drake said. "You're fighting for your dignity and your freedom." The weight of it hit me then. This was my daughter, my only child, the baby I'd sacrificed everything for, and tomorrow I'd be standing in court fighting against her. What if I'm wrong? The words came out before I could stop them. What if she really is concerned? Drake's response was immediate and firm. "Then why did she slap you? Why the credit check? Why the emergency motion? Mrs. Carter, Sophie's actions reveal her motives, not her words." He was right. I knew he was right. That night, I walked through my penthouse alone, remembering what each room had cost. The living room represented 5 years of double shifts. The kitchen, all the holidays I'd worked instead of celebrating. The master bedroom with its city view, the dream I'd held on to for decades. I stood at the window looking at my reflection. The bruise had faded but was still visible, physical evidence of what my daughter had done to me. I am not weak, I thought. I am not incompetent. I am a woman who worked 40 years for this security, and no one, not even my daughter, has the right to take it. I laid out my court outfit, professional, dignified, strong, set my alarm for 6 a.m. Court was at 9. At 11 p.m., my phone lit up with an email from an unknown address. Subject: "You need to see this before court tomorrow." There was an attachment, video file. My finger hovered over it for a moment, then security clicked. Footage, the wedding venue. The timestamp read 30 minutes before the slap. The video showed a private room. Sophie in her wedding dress, Luke in his tuxedo, Clara in her mother of the bride outfit. They were laughing, relaxed, rehearsing something. I turned up the volume. So we approach her during the reception, Luke was saying. Present the papers. When she refuses, then we move to the guardianship, Sophie interrupted. Once the judge sees how worried we are, this will
Clara's
be easy.
voice.
And the slap? If she fights back. Sophie laughed, actually laughed. Mom won't know what hit her. By the time she realizes what's happening, we'll have control of everything. The video ended. I sat there in the darkness of my penthouse, staring at the screen, and felt the last shred of doubt evaporate. Tomorrow, I was going to destroy her. I walked into that courtroom like I was walking into battle. The family court was smaller than I expected, intimate in a way that felt almost claustrophobic. There was nowhere to hide here. Every expression, every reaction would be seen by everyone in the room. Magistrate Alan Rivers sat at the bench reviewing documents. Judge Grace Harper had recused herself as the presiding judge since she'd be testifying as a witness. But she was there, seated on my side of the courtroom. That simple fact, that she'd chosen a side, gave me strength. Across the aisle, Sophie sat in the front row with Luke, flanked by their attorney Marcus Webb. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than my first car, his silver cufflinks catching the fluorescent light. Sophie had dressed the part perfectly. Conservative navy dress, minimal makeup, a tissue already clutched in her hand like a prop. The concerned daughter, worried about her deteriorating mother, Clara sat directly behind them, playing the role of supportive aunt. On my side, William Drake, Dr. Patricia Chen, Rachel Moore from Adult Protective Services, Margaret from the hospital, and several other character witnesses. My army, my truth. All rise, the bailiff announced. Magistrate Rivers looked up, his expression neutral and unreadable. Be seated. We're here today regarding a petition for emergency guardianship filed by Sophie Carter Bennett and Luke Bennett concerning Evelyn Carter. Mr. Webb, your opening statement. Marcus Webb stood smoothly, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, we're here today because a loving daughter is watching her mother deteriorate before her eyes. My jaw clenched. Here we go. Mrs. Carter is 68 years old, living alone in a large property she can no longer safely maintain, Webb continued, his voice dripping with false concern. She's isolated, making increasingly poor decisions, showing clear signs of cognitive decline. Her daughter, Sophie, has watched with growing alarm as her mother's behavior has become erratic, and frankly, dangerous to herself. He paused for effect. Sophie Carter Bennett only wants to protect the woman who raised her, to ensure her mother's final years are safe, comfortable, and properly managed. That's why we're here today. I wanted to stand up and scream that he was lying, but Drake's hand on my arm kept me steady. Wait, his touch said. Let them dig their own grave. I'd like to call Sophie Carter Bennett to the stand, Webb said. Sophie stood, dabbing at her eyes with that tissue as she walked to the witness stand. She was sworn in, sat down, and immediately the tears started flowing. Sophie, Webb said gently, can you tell the court about your concerns for your mother? I'm so worried about her. Sophie's voice broke convincingly. She's not herself anymore. She forgets things, important things. She's missed doctor's appointments. Sometimes I call and she doesn't remember we just spoke the day before. Every word was a lie, but she delivered them with perfect sincerity. Can you describe what happened at your wedding? Webb asked. Sophie's face crumpled. We were trying to talk to her about her living situation. Luke and I were concerned about her being alone in that big penthouse. We suggested she might be happier somewhere with more support, and she became confused, aggressive. She started yelling at us in front of all our guests. I gripped the armrest of my chair so hard my knuckles turned white. She's paranoid, Sophie continued, her voice shaking. She thinks everyone is against her. She thinks we're trying to steal from her. It's heartbreaking to watch someone you love lose themselves like this. And you love your mother? Webb prompted. Of course I do. Sophie looked directly at me, her eyes wet with crocodile tears. I just want her safe. Clara was called next, playing her part perfectly. Evelyn has always been stubborn, she testified. But lately it's different. She's hostile, irrational, refuses help from family. I'm her sister. I've known her for 68 years. Something is very wrong. Then Dr. James Whitmore. Sophie's family friend who'd never actually examined me. While I haven't evaluated Mrs. Carter directly based on Sophie's descriptions, I have concerns about possible cognitive impairment. The behaviors described are consistent with early-stage dementia. The case was building against me, each testimony another brick in a wall designed to cage me. I could feel the magistrate listening, considering, weighing their words. Then William Drake stood up. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice calm and measured, "you say you're concerned about your mother. When exactly did this concern begin?" Sophie hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "About 6 months ago." Interesting. Drake pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and read aloud. "Text message from you to your mother. Dated 6 months ago. Mom, have you thought about what the penthouse is worth in today's market? Is concern typically measured in dollars, Miss Bennett?" Sophie's face flushed. "That's not. I was just... At your wedding, what exactly did you ask your mother for?" "I asked her to consider downsizing, for her own good." "Really?" Drake's eyebrows raised. "You asked her to sign over her penthouse. You had legal documents prepared in advance. True or false?" Sophie's composure was cracking, tiny fissures appearing in her concerned daughter mask. "She doesn't need that much space. She's 68 and alone." "Answer the question, please. Did you demand she sign over her property at your wedding? It was supposed to be a gift." Sophie's voice rose, defensive. "A normal mother would want to help her daughter. And when she refused, what did you do?" Sophie froze. The courtroom was absolutely silent. We had an argument." "You struck her." Drake's voice was flat, factual. "You slapped your 68-year-old mother across the face, in front of 250 witnesses, including Judge Grace Harper, who is here today to testify to that fact." The mask was slipping now, really slipping. "She deserved it," Sophie snapped, then immediately realized what she'd said. "No, I mean, after everything I've sacrificed." "Sophie," Marcus Webb hissed, trying to salvage his crumbling case. "Don't—" But Sophie was unraveling in real time. "That penthouse should be mine. I'm her daughter. What's she going to do with it anyway? She's practically dead." The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Magistrate Rivers banged his gavel. "Miss Bennett, compose yourself." But the damage was done. Sophie had revealed herself, her true motives laid bare by her own rage. Drake turned to Magistrate Rivers. "Your Honor, if I may, there's something the court needs to see." Drake pulled out a tablet and connected it to the courtroom's display screen. "This footage was provided by an anonymous source last night," he said. "It's security camera footage from the wedding venue, time-stamp 30 minutes before the ceremony began." The video started playing and I watched Sophie's face drain of all color. There on the screen were Sophie, Luke, and Clara in a private room, laughing, relaxed, rehearsing. Luke's voice came through the speakers, crystal clear. "So we're agreed? We approach her during the reception, present the papers, and if she refuses..." "Then we move to Plan B," Sophie interrupted on the video, smiling. "File for guardianship. She can't fight us if she's declared incompetent." "And you're sure about the value? $2.3 million? Luke nodded on screen. "Minimum. Once we have control, we sell it within 6 months. After splitting 3 ways and paying off my debts, we're still looking at about $700,000 Sophie each." Actually laughed in the video. "Mom won't know what hit her. She's too proud to think her own daughter would do this to her." "And if she does fight?" Luke asked. Sophie's response, cold and calculated. "She's 68 and alone. Who's going to believe her over her concerned family?" The video ended. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Sophie looked like she might vomit. Luke was pale, his expensive composure completely shattered. Clara had her hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "That video is out of context," Luke tried weakly. Drake smiled. "The metadata shows it's unedited, time-stamped, pulled directly from the venue's security system." He turned back to the magistrate. "Your Honor, I have additional evidence." He presented document after document. Luke's 3 bankrupt LLCs, debts totaling $340,000. the unauthorized credit check on my property. Text messages between Sophie and Luke discussing the penthouse's investment potential. An email trail showing Clara had been promised $700,000 for her cooperation in the scheme. "Your Honor," Drake said, his voice ringing with conviction, "this isn't a guardianship case. This is financial elder abuse. A calculated conspiracy to defraud a vulnerable elderly woman of her life savings." Clara started crying, real tears this time. "I didn't know they were serious. Sophie said it was just planning, just talk." "Ms. Dawson," Drake said coldly, "you signed a guardianship petition. You testified under oath. That's not just talk." Dr. Whitmore was backpedaling frantically. "I was misled. I never actually examined Mrs. Carter. I was basing my entire opinion on what Sophie told me." The conspiracy was unraveling thread by thread, witness by witness. Marcus Webb stood, looking rattled for the first time. "Your Honor, I'd like to request a recess to confer with my client." Denied. Magistrate Rivers' voice was ice. "Mr. Drake, call your next witness." "The defense calls Evelyn Carter." I stood up, and for a brief moment my eyes met Sophie's across the courtroom. I saw fear there now, recognition that she'd lost. I walked to the witness stand with my head high. After I was sworn in, Drake asked me about my professional background. I told them about my 40 years as a registered nurse in critical care, managing life and death situations, daily, making split-second decisions that saved lives. "Do you believe you're capable of managing your own affairs?" Drake asked. "Absolutely," I said clearly. "I manage my finances, my health, my home. I'm independent and fully competent." Dr. Chen testified about my cognitive evaluation, perfect scores across the board. Rachel Moore from APS testified about the wellness check, my immaculate home, my obvious competency. Judge Grace Harper described witnessing the assault at the wedding, confirming I was the victim, not the aggressor. Margaret, Tom Rodriguez, Helen Park. Each one testified to my capability, my independence, my sharp mind. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Evidence-based competency versus Sophie's fabricated claims. "Mrs. Carter," Drake asked gently, "why do you think your daughter filed this petition?" My moment to speak the truth. "Because I refused to give her my home," I said, my voice steady and clear. "The home I worked 40 years to afford. She wanted it as a wedding gift, and when I said no, she decided to take it by force." I looked directly at Sophie. "I love my daughter. I love the girl she used to be. But this woman who slapped me, who conspired with her husband and my own sister to steal my security, I don't know her anymore." My voice didn't waver. "I'm not incompetent. I'm not deteriorating. I'm just a mother who finally had to admit that her daughter values money more than she values me." "That's not true," Sophie burst out. "Mom, "Miss Bennett," Magistrate Rivers said sharply, "you'll have your chance if your attorney wishes to cross-examine." Marcus Webb looked at Sophie, then at the magistrate. "No
Smart
questions,
move.
Your Honor. Anything Sophie said now would only make things worse." Magistrate Rivers reviewed his notes, then looked up at the courtroom. "I've reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and watched that deeply disturbing video," he said. "Mrs. Carter is clearly competent. The medical evidence is unambiguous. The wellness check confirms it." He looked directly at Sophie, his expression hard. "What I see here is not a concerned family. I see a calculated attempt to exploit an elderly woman for financial gain." He banged his gavel. "The guardianship petition is denied." Relief flooded through me like a wave. But Magistrate Rivers wasn't done. "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into potential elder abuse and fraud." Sophie's face went white. "Ms. Bennett," the magistrate continued, "you should be ashamed. Your mother worked her entire life for security and you tried to steal it with lies and manipulation." He turned to Luke. "Mr. Bennett, your financial desperation doesn't justify elder abuse." Then to Clara, "Ms. Dawson, you betrayed your own sister for money. I hope it was worth it." The gavel came down one final time. "This hearing is concluded. Mrs. Carter, you're free to go. You maintain full control of your assets and all decisions regarding your life." Drake's hand supportive on my shoulder. Sophie was trying to approach me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please, let me explain. I looked at her, just looked at her. No words were necessary. Everything I needed to say was in that single cold stare. Then I turned and walked out of that courtroom with my head held high, Sophie's sobs echoing behind me. Outside, the fresh air hit my face, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe freely. You did it, Drake said. You protected yourself. No, I said quietly. I just refused to be a victim. My phone buzzed in my purse. Unknown number. I almost didn't look. Text message, Mom, it's Sophie, please. I have nowhere else to go. Luke left me. I'm pregnant. I need you. I stared at the screen, and all I could think was, here we go again. I stared at Sophie's text message in the car outside the courthouse, my hands still shaking from the verdict. Everything okay? Drake asked, glancing over from the driver's seat. I showed him the screen. Mom, it's Sophie, please. I have nowhere else to go. Luke left me. I'm pregnant. I need you. Drake's expression hardened immediately. It could be another manipulation. The timing is suspiciously perfect. Be very careful. And that was the question, wasn't it? Was this real, or was this just another play in Sophie's endless game of manipulation? My daughter, pregnant and alone, the mother in me wanted to rush to her side immediately. But the woman who just fought for her life in court knew better than to trust without verification. I took a deep breath and typed out my response. If you're pregnant, I'm happy for you. But I will not be manipulated again. If you want to talk, it will be in William Drake's office with witnesses, and you will respect my boundaries. The response came back in seconds. I don't need your lawyer present to talk to my own mother. There it was. Still trying to control the terms. Still wanting everything her way. My thumbs moved across the screen. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them, and turned off my phone. 3 days of silence followed. 3 days where I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I'd driven my pregnant daughter away, if I was failing as a mother all over again. Then Drake's office called. Sophie had agreed to the meeting. She arrived alone. No Luke. Apparently he'd left her the moment their scheme fell apart. No expensive attorney, no sister for backup. Just Sophie, looking disheveled in a way I'd never seen before, her eyes red from crying, clutching pregnancy test results and an ultrasound photo. We sat across from each other in Drake's conference room, a table between us like a barricade. Mom, I'm so sorry. The tears started immediately. I was under so much pressure from Luke. He manipulated me into all of this. I wasn't thinking clearly. Sophie. My voice was calm but firm. Stop. She looked up, surprised. I watched that video, I said. Luke didn't manipulate you. You were an eager participant. You laughed about how I wouldn't know what hit me. Those were your words, face, not his. But I'm pregnant now. Your grandchild. Doesn't that mean anything? It means everything. I leaned forward, and that's exactly why I'm setting boundaries. Her eyes widened in confusion. If you're having a baby, I continued, that child deserves a mother who takes responsibility for her actions. Not one who blames others and manipulates family for money. So, you're going to abandon your own grandchild? Sophie's voice rose, that familiar edge of accusation creeping in. No. I kept my voice steady. I'm protecting that child from being raised by a mother who hasn't learned accountability. I laid out my terms clearly, one by one. The penthouse remained 100% mine. No discussion, no negotiation, ever. Sophie would attend therapy for at least 6 months, and I would pay for it. She would have to demonstrate genuine change, not performed change. And I would set up a trust for the grandchild, $500,000, accessible when they turned 30, managed by Drake's firm. Sophie would never touch that money directly. You're punishing me, Sophie shouted, her tears turning to rage. No, I said firmly. I'm teaching you consequences, something I should have done years ago instead of trying to buy your love with money and guilt. Drake cleared his throat. Miss Bennett, you should also know the district attorney is reviewing your case. You may face criminal charges for conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud. Sophie's face went white. Mom, please, don't let them prosecute me. I'm pregnant. This was the hardest moment. The mother in me wanted to protect her, to call the DA and beg them to drop it. But the woman who'd learned her worth knew better. "Sophie, I will not interfere with the legal process. You made choices. Now you face consequences." Sophie stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Then she stood up abruptly, knocking her chair back. "Fine, fine. I don't need you anyway. I never did." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I sat there in the silence that followed, tears streaming down my face. But these weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of grief. For the daughter I'd wanted her to be, for the relationship we'd never have, for the years I'd wasted trying to earn love that should have been freely given. "You did the right thing," Drake said quietly. "Then why does it hurt so much?" "Because you're a good mother," he replied. "She's just not ready to be a good daughter." I wiped my eyes. But what if she changes? What if she really means it someday? Drake handed me a tissue. "Then she'll prove it through actions, not words. And if she does, you'll be there." But on your terms, 2 weeks after the verdict, my life started to find its rhythm again. The DA's office ultimately declined to press criminal charges. Insufficient evidence, they said, and the guardianship petition had been technically legal even if ethically wrong. But they did grant me a restraining order. Sophie couldn't contact me except through Drake's office. All my legal documents were updated, secured, locked down tight. Then Clara's letter arrived. I was wrong. I was greedy. I let Sophie convince me you were being difficult. "Can we talk?" I wrote back, keeping it brief and formal. "Clara, you chose money over sisterhood. I forgive you because bitterness serves no one, but trust is earned, not given. If you want a relationship, it will take time and proof of change." Her response came 2 days later. "You always were self-righteous." I stared at that sentence and realized Clara hadn't changed at all. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted absolution without accountability. She wanted me to forget what she'd done and go back to the way things were. I deleted the email and never responded. Some relationships are meant to end. Sophie kept trying, though. Emails arrived at Drake's office weekly. "I'm in therapy now. Doesn't that count? After 3 weeks, tell my mother I'm doing everything she asked." Drake would forward them to me with his assessment. "She's performed compliance for a month. That's not change, that's theater. Real change took time, and Sophie wanted instant forgiveness." But slowly, quietly, my life was transforming into something I'd never imagined. I went back to volunteering at the free clinic, something I'd stopped during the legal battle. Working with patients again reminded me of who I was: capable, competent, needed. Tom Rodriguez, my building manager, smiled when he saw me in the lobby. "It's good to see you smiling again, Mrs. Carter." I reconnected with old friends. Margaret and I started having weekly coffee dates. My neighbors stopped looking at me with pity and started inviting me to book clubs and dinner parties. Then Judge Grace Harper called. "Evelyn, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I'd love to take you to lunch." Over salads at a quiet bistro, Grace told me about her own battle years ago, fighting her family over her mother's estate, watching siblings she'd loved turn into strangers over money. "The pain lessens," she said gently. "The guilt fades. You learn to live with the grief of who they could have been." "Do you regret protecting yourself?" I asked. "Never." Grace's answer was immediate. "I regret that I had to. But I don't regret choosing my own well-being." Grace became a real friend, not just a legal ally. We met for lunch every other week, went to art galleries, laughed about getting older in a world that tried to make us invisible. I redecorated my penthouse, finally making it truly mine. I took down the photos of Sophie that had felt like shrines to obligation and guilt. I added paintings I loved, plants that made the space feel alive, colors that made me happy. The transformation wasn't just physical. I started taking a painting class at the community center, read all the books I'd never had time for during my nursing career, watched sunrises from my balcony with my morning coffee, grateful for another day that was entirely my own. And then there was Robert Chen, Dr. Patricia Chen's brother, a widowed architect who'd lost his wife 3 years ago. We'd met at a gallery opening Grace had dragged me to. He was kind, thoughtful, and made me laugh without trying too hard. Coffee dates turned into museum visits, then dinners, then long walks through the city discussing everything and nothing. It wasn't desperate or consuming. It was companionship, comfort. The reminder that my life wasn't over at 68. It was just different, maybe even better. Drake and I finalized my estate plan. The penthouse would stay mine for life. When I died, it would be sold, and the proceeds would go into trust for any grandchildren. If there were no grandchildren, the money would fund a nursing scholarship in my name. Sophie was specifically excluded, not out of spite, but out of protection. For both of us. The trust for Sophie's baby was set up separately. $500,000, accessible at age 30, managed by Drake's firm where Sophie could never touch it. I'd written a letter to be given to my grandchild on their 30th birthday. Your grandmother loved you enough to protect you from unhealthy patterns. Use this wisely. 6 months passed like that, healing, rebuilding, learning to live again. Then, on a crisp autumn morning, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera and my breath caught. Sophie stood in the hallway, visibly pregnant now, 7 months at least, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked exhausted, real, not performing. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Hello, Sophie." "Hi, Mom." Her voice was quiet, stripped of manipulation. "Can we talk?" "Just 5 minutes, out here is fine." We stood in the hallway, and Sophie didn't try to push her way in, didn't cry, didn't make demands. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm having a girl." My heart clenched. A granddaughter. I've been in therapy. Real therapy, not for show. Dr. Simmons. You can call her if you want proof. Sophie took a shaky breath. Luke leaving was the best thing that happened to me. I was so desperate to keep him I became someone I hate. She looked directly at me. I blamed him in Drake's office. That was a lie. I knew exactly what I was doing. This was different. The words weren't rehearsed. The shame on her face wasn't performed. Sophie continued, her voice breaking. "You worked so hard and you finally had something beautiful, and I felt entitled to it. I convinced myself you owed me because you worked so much when I was growing up. But you were working for me. I see that now." Tears rolled down her cheeks, real ones. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know I understand what I did." Her hand moved to her belly. "And I'm terrified I'll be a terrible mother, because I was a terrible daughter." I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Sophie, awareness is the first step. But it's only the first step." She nodded. "I can't be in your life the way I was," I said. "That version of us, where I sacrifice and you take, that's over forever." "I know," Sophie said quietly. "I'm not asking for that. If you're serious about changing, I'll be here, but at a distance, with boundaries. And if you manipulate me again, I'm done. Permanently. I understand." "When the baby comes," I said carefully, "I'd like to meet her. Not to take over, not to push in, just to meet my granddaughter." Sophie's eyes filled with hope. "Really?" "We'll see where you are then," I cautioned. "If your therapist confirms you're doing the work, we can talk." "Okay." Sophie accepted the terms without argument. "That's fair." Before she left, she said, "Mom, I'm sorry for all of it. The slap, the guardianship, the lies. You didn't deserve any of that." "No," I agreed, "I didn't. But thank you for saying it." I watched Sophie walk away, then closed my door. Was this real change or another long game? Time would tell. But I wasn't afraid anymore of either outcome. 3 months later, a birth announcement arrived in the mail. Lily Grace Bennett, 7 lbs 3 ounces. The photo showed Sophie in a hospital bed, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink, looking exhausted and genuine. No filter, no performance, just a new mother overwhelmed and scared. The note was simple, no pressure, but if you want to meet her, I'd like that. Sophie. I showed the photo to Robert over coffee the next morning. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I'm going to meet my granddaughter," I said, with boundaries and hope. That evening I stood at my penthouse window, the same window where I'd stood broken and alone 6 months ago after Sophie's wedding. But now everything was different. I was healed. strong, living on my own terms. The city lights twinkled below me. The penthouse was mine, secured and protected. My life was my own. I am 68 years old, I thought. I survived betrayal. I defended my dignity. I chose myself. And whatever comes next, I'll face it as a woman who knows her worth. The penthouse isn't just a building. It's proof that I matter. That my life's work matters. And no one, not even my daughter,